There comes a time in a lot of our lives that we do have to take care of the person who raised us. Maybe that already happened for you, or maybe that's something that you know is in your immediate future or even in the long future. We never know. My father was so healthy. We went on a beautiful hike together months before he got his cancer diagnosis. He was leaving me and my husband behind. I remember thinking, why can't you just take the easy way as he'd go up and down the mountains? He lived in the Ozark Mountains, and that was the way he stayed physically fit and healthy, was to go hiking. And we expected him to live for so long. We did not expect to become his caregivers at such a young age. So if you haven't even thought about caregiving for whoever it was who raised you, it might be something to consider, because it could happen sooner than you expect. And of course, I don't say that to scare you. I just say that maybe this video could be for you, even if you don't think that's the stage in your life yet that you're in. So caring for my father came with a lot of lessons, and I want to share a few of those lessons with you. Also, hi, I am A. Rose. I live in a beautiful rural oasis with my husband, and I'm learning how to live slower, to focus on who I'm being instead of what I'm doing, release the need for hustle and productivity, and instead just focus on being the best person I can be for my family and those around me. I used to be a hustler. I graduated top of my class in high school. I went to a good college. I was on the path to live in the city, take on the corporate world, and I decided to come back for family. And boy, am I happy I did, and I'm so happy I'm living this slower life. So that's who I am. I also want to give you a little backstory about my father and I and our relationship, because I think some context is important. So I want to talk about his diagnosis and what it looked like to take care of him in our particular situation. My father was a complex man. He was a product of his raising. He was raised by a really stern man who went through the Great Depression, who was a Baptist minister and really believed in spare the rod, spoil the child mentality. And the rod was certainly not spared on my father, which was a mentality that he passed on to us. And life with him wasn't always perfect. He had a very hard life, and my childhood had its hard too. So when I was 5 years old, my mother, little brother, and sister passed away in a house fire. And obviously that was a traumatic event for all of us. And it made it where my father had to take care of me and my two older sisters, which now that I'm a parent, I realize what an absolutely huge task that was. And so of course he was in survival mode and needed us to just do what we were supposed to do. And he tried to get married a few times after, and they never ended up working because he wasn't an easy man to live with. And I ended up at the age of 14 going into foster care. And I didn't have much contact with my dad through high school. College, I started to rebuild the relationship, but it was a little bit rocky. And then after college really was when some repairs started to happen. When I moved back home, we still had our issues. There was issues around boundaries, issues around past relationships, what each person was and wasn't okay with the other person doing, which I think is normal to have those struggles with your parents, or maybe, if not normal, common. So the relationship wasn't shaping up to be one where I would have been the primary caregiver for my father, because it wasn't a smooth relationship. But in 2025, I met my husband, and my husband comes from a family that has stayed together, and he learned the value of commitment. Man, is that man committed to anything to any person or even animal that he says he's going to take care of or he's going to keep in his life. he keeps in his life. And I'm so thankful for that quality in him. So when the time came to take care of my father, it was a no-brainer to my husband. He was 100% on board. And I'm really thankful that he helped me take that push to take care of him, because it ended up being the right decision. So my husband and I had been married for a year, around a year, when my father received the diagnosis of MDS, which is a bone marrow cancer. He received this diagnosis actually on the very same day that I realized I was pregnant with our first child, Miriam. I was driving down to my sister's, who lives a couple hours away, to see my dad. He was there in town with her, going to the doctor. And so I was driving down to see him, and we knew he was sick. We just didn't know what was going on. On the way down, I also felt a little sick, so I took a pregnancy test and realized that I was pregnant with our first daughter. And I was able to share that tiny bit of good news in an otherwise very hard situation. Being pregnant with my daughter meant through that I went through my entire first pregnancy and raising a young human while taking care of my father. I think as people like me are waiting until later in life to have their first child, it is pretty common to be what they're calling the sandwich generation, which means that you're taking care of your own children while also caregiving for your parents. And it was hard. It was hard switching into the role of caregiver for my daughter and my dad at the same time. I went from really not having to worry about anyone but myself to taking care of two people. It was a challenge for sure. So I think that's enough context. Let's go ahead and jump into some lessons that maybe, even if you just relate to one or two of these lessons, maybe they will help you be a little gentler with yourself, a little more understanding. And if you've already taken care of a parent, maybe it'll help you release any regret that you may have. And if you are in a point where you're thinking about taking care of a parent or in the middle of it, maybe it'll allow you to give yourself just a little bit more grace. So let's get into it. Number one, and I'm starting out the gate with a more challenging topic, but let's do it. Number one, you're going to get frustrated with them, or triggered, whatever you want to call it. Think about it. If you get frustrated with really anyone you live with, if you get frustrated with anyone you're closely connected with, how much more are you going to get frustrated with the person who raised you and instilled your triggers in you? So if you get frustrated with your beautiful new baby, which I don't know if I should admit that, but yes, I have gotten frustrated at my babies. You know, I try to not act on that frustration, but it happens, and I've only gotten better. But when I first started taking care of my dad, I was very new into the parenting role and new into learning what was triggering and frustrating to me. And so I did get frustrated with my dad, and I didn't always handle it beautifully. And some of that had to do with our relationship. Some of that had to do with how much I was seeing my dad. So he originally, when he got diagnosed with cancer, he lived a couple hours from us in the Ozark Mountains, and he was going to treatment in the biggest city in Arkansas, Little Rock. It has a med school there and a great cancer institute. So he was getting his treatment there. But as his disease progressed, he came and lived with my husband and I, which was 2 hours in the opposite direction of Little Rock. We live 4 hours from Little Rock. So I spent a lot of time driving my dad back and forth to treatment. That's a lot of time in the car and a lot of really close connection. And so, yes, I did get frustrated with him. I got frustrated with regular things, like how he was commenting on my driving. I got frustrated with things that were a lot more related to his care, like doubting or questioning how much he could have been doing, or what decisions he was making on his healing journey. And I I think because, I mean, I didn't know it immediately at the time. Like in the very beginning, we didn't know he was dying. But even when it got closer to that time, and it may make more sense to have only had a loving attitude towards him because I wasn't going to have much more time with him, I was still under a lot of stress. And so I did get frustrated with him. I apologized. You know, we had a really good relationship in the end where we were really open with each other, and so I was able to apologize, and he was very gracious. So I don't go into this stage past his life with any regrets. I recognize, you know, I have compassion and empathy for my past self who was taking care of him. Like, of course you were going to get frustrated. It was hard. It felt hard because it is hard, as Dr. Becky says. Lesson 2, you are more capable than you think. When my father first got sick, I did not expect to be able to do what I had to do, especially in the end. And you're more capable than you think with all the roles of caregiving, with all the things. You know, you're more capable than you might expect. If you think, okay, I have a child, there's no way I can take care of my parent as well. Maybe you can. You know, Miriam, thank goodness, she was such an easy baby. She drove back and forth to Little Rock with me and my dad. It was, you know, it was sweet, sad and sweet. When I first met his oncologist, I was pregnant, and we were talking about being pregnant, and then they saw me get bigger and bigger, and then they saw me bring in Miriam, and then they saw her grow all the way up until she was 9 months, 10 months old, which is when he passed away. You know, and I was more capable than I expected. Another way, and I'm just going there. In the beginning, both me and my dad never expected that I could do the really intensive caregiving of taking care of someone who isn't able to get to the bathroom on their own. That was something that my dad did not want to have to go through with me. Nobody does. And it was something I didn't want to have to go through as well. But at the end, when he came home on hospice, he needed that care. Not too much of it, but a little bit of it. And when the time came, it wasn't as hard as I expected. You just do it. It just, you know, you just make it happen. And so if you're in the beginning of this caregiving and you're imagining what it could go to or what it could look like, just know you are more capable than you might think. Okay, go on, Sophie. Love you. Another lesson is it's okay to hate the process. I mean, of course you hate that your parent is sick, you know, but it's also okay to hate caregiving for them. Like, it's okay to not enjoy it. It's not enjoyable. It's not easy. And showing up despite something not being enjoyable or easy is what you need. Not need, but it is the action. You know, you don't have to show up with a smile on your face. You don't have to show up and enjoy it. If you're showing up, that's enough. And by the way, I don't think I prefaced this in the beginning, but when I talk about showing up, I'm not necessarily talking about the extreme case that Dana and I did in the end where we took care of my dad on hospice and he even passed away in our own home. So we cared for him probably for 3 weeks very intensively, and that was the path for us. But I'm not talking about that. You know, caregiving could look like anything. It could look like extra phone calls. It could look like taking care of their financials. It could look like helping them with certain things. It could look like visiting them in a care facility. It doesn't have to look like the extreme of them living with you and you actually caring for them day in and day out. If that is what it looks like, you know, that's one side of it, but all of it is valid and all of it is hard. So it's okay to not enjoy being a caregiver. You know, being a parent is a caregiving role that, at least biologically, you crave. And most of us choose. I mean, some people maybe didn't make the conscious decision in the beginning, but nobody chooses to be a caregiver of their parent, in the sense that no one chooses for their parent to get to a point to need their caregiving. And so you're thrust into this role. You're dealing with potentially death, and it's hard. So it's okay to hate it, and you're doing enough by just showing up. You don't have to show up even with a smile on your face. Lesson 4, you can't force somebody to heal. They can't even force themselves to heal. You know, healing is, there's things that you can do to make yourself healthier. But when it gets to a certain point, in certain conditions, it's kind of better to not be too intimately involved in trying all these new things, or trying to force your parent to do certain things that you think could be healing. What I mean by this, so after my father received the bone marrow transplant, and he was back living in the RV on our land, and we thought he was healing, there came a point where he started to get worse again, and he wasn't getting out of bed. And I felt like it was better for his healing if he would go ahead. Sorry, my baby, he is playing on a blanket over there, so if you hear a little chatter in the background, that's what's happening. And I lost my train of thought because of him. But there came a point where he wasn't getting out of bed, and it was easy for me to think that he needed to be pushed more, that he needed to get out, he needed to exercise, he needed the sun on his skin to heal. And I remember not being, in hindsight, not being as delicate as I wish I was, by being a little bit too, like, come on, Dad, like, mind over matter, like, get out of bed. And I had to deal with the fact that, you know, a couple weeks later, he went to a checkup, and he got diagnosed with leukemia. His MDS had not only come back, but it had morphed into an acute aggressive leukemia, at which point they told us that he may last 3 months if another round of chemo worked, or he was going to be probably gone within 3 weeks. And so he was very sick. And I don't think I really fully trusted that. I felt before he got that official diagnosis, when he stopped getting up again after his bone marrow transplant, there was a part of me that just wanted to push him to act like he was better, to be healed. I wanted to push him to be healed. And I had to apologize to him, because I don't think I gave him enough grace for the struggle he was going through. I think I pushed him way more than I feel good about. So I had to go and apologize to him. Fortunately, he was very understanding, and he reminded me that it wasn't out of meanness that I did that. I was doing it because I just truly wanted him to be better. I did it because I was hoping he was better. We had gone through quite a few weeks living in our RV in Little Rock as he went through this bone marrow transplant. We'd taken care of him. He had gotten better. We had brought him home, and we were so hopeful that he was better. So I did struggle a lot when he started to get sick again. I struggled with trusting him. I struggled with trusting his body and trusting that he really wasn't feeling good. I just wanted him healed. And I thought like that there was more mental to it. And sometimes there isn't. Sometimes they're just sick, and you can't force it to be any other way. Lesson 6 is, I hope you have somebody to vent to. You need a safe place to vent. There is a lot going on and a lot of new experiences. Like I said, you're going to be frustrated with them. You're not going to really understand why they're doing what they're doing. You need to be able to vent it all out. because you definitely don't need to talk to them about it. There's no reason to, I mean, for the most part, there's no reason to share that negativity with your parent. They're going through enough. So you need some outside objective person, someone who isn't involved, to help you. For me, I had a couple people. I had my bonus mom. She lives in Portland, Oregon. I called her so many times, all the updates, and it was very therapeutic. You know, she's someone who knows how to just listen when I need that, and also knows how to give very delicate advice if that is what I need. My oldest sister, even, her history with my dad was such that she said, I can't be the one taking care of him, but I can give you support if you take care of him. And she did. She answered all my phone calls and listened to me cry and rant, and I'm really thankful that I had those connections, and I hope you do too if you go through this, and if not, try to find somebody to talk to in some area of your life. And it's probably better to have someone who's totally disconnected. Like, my husband wasn't quite this. It was harder to talk to him because he was in the middle of it with me. I needed somebody outside, a third party. And so, it's okay to talk about it. I mean, I know, like, there's value in not talking negativity and not gossiping. This is not that. This is getting off your chest some really hard, heavy stuff, and you need that. Last lesson I'm going to talk about, and I saved the more positive to the end, is there is blessings in it. I know that I just kind of dumped a lot of the hard right there here in the front, because I think you need to hear about the hard, because that is what's going to really maybe be surprising, maybe be what you're focusing on. It is a hard experience, but I want to talk about the blessings. It is actually, there is some positives. Having my dad live up here with me, and again, maybe your parent doesn't actually live with you, but having him sick forced me to see him more, forced me to have that time with him, which was good. I needed that additional time with him. I'm really, really thankful for all the memories I have. I'm thankful for the fact that Dannon and I, we go drive somewhere, and my dad loved being a passenger. He loved driving around, and Dannon and I went on a bunch of random little trips. We went and got our bull Spook together, and so that makes, when I see our bull, that makes my heart happy. I think of him. We also have a lot of my dad's animals, and he was with me as we were caring for them. And it's really beautiful to have so many things that remind me of him, and so many good memories. It's funny what your brain does. A lot of times, once it's over, it starts to filter out the bad. Like, I can't hardly even give very many examples. Like I talked about, it's okay to get frustrated, because I do remember being frustrated, but I don't hardly even remember the exact times when I was frustrated. I do remember laughing in the car driving. I remember when he was in Little Rock for his final round of chemotherapy before he came home on hospice. And before he got started on that chemotherapy, he kind of had a little spike, which they said he would, that it's normal to kind of go up in energy, feel a little better before coming back down. And we were on one of those highs, and he was in the hospital, but he wanted to see Miriam, and Miriam wasn't allowed to go upstairs. So they told us he was allowed to come down into the lobby. We might have broke the rules just a little bit and actually took him out into our truck, and we do drive around Little Rock, and we'd look at all the pretty houses together, and he would just talk with us. And we went out to Mexican to eat, and he had a couple sips of a margarita and felt very tipsy really quickly, and he was in a really good mental spot for a little while, and we had a lot of laughs and a lot of positive experiences together. So those will happen. It's not all hard, and it's wonderful to get the opportunity to spend so much more time with your parent. Okay, I'm back in my house because I thought I was all done, and I realized I forgot one of the lessons. And this one is especially for those of you that are taking on the primary care role. So the ones that have been there are the default primary care provider. Okay, so a lot of times in families, there's going to be one child or one member of the family that can really step up and take care of the parent, while the other family members might not be able to. And there might come a time, there did for me, where your decision making is questioned. And I just want you to know that because you've been there the whole time, you can trust yourself. So this lesson is trust yourself that you're providing the best care. And, don't let others make you doubt yourself. The way this occurred for me is in the very end when my dad was on hospice. He came home and he declined quickly. He needed all of the medicine support he could to not be in absolute agony. And I was there the whole time. So I saw this decline. I saw him no longer talking. I saw him begging for more medicine. And I was told by the hospice workers that came and checked on us every day to give him a certain type and dosage of pain relief. And my dad had a few people who came to visit him at the end who unfortunately came a little too late. They got here and he was already unresponsive. My dad was unresponsive for probably about 4 days, and we didn't have that happy ending. We didn't have the happy ending of everyone gathering around the bed and there was amends being made and I'm so proud of yous being shared. Like, that didn't happen. He wasn't talking for those final 4 days and he passed away. And I think this can happen quite a bit, that you don't have that fairy tale ending. So when people showed up, it was easy to see me give him medicine as the reason why he wasn't talking. So there was kind of that questioning that occurred, that like, oh, are you over medicating him? Like, can you make him talk again? Can you stop giving him his medicine so that he will talk? And I doubted myself and I said, okay. And I stopped giving him his medicine. And pretty much he didn't get the normal dosage for quite a few hours. People waited around for him to become responsive, and he didn't. All he did was start acting so much worse sickness-wise, and the only thing he said was, help me. Like, Abby, help me. Like, Abby, you knew what you were supposed to do. We had talked about this. You weren't supposed to let me suffer. Help me. He was not going to be talking. He wasn't going to be having these beautiful last-minute amends, and I needed to trust myself. I needed to trust that I had already seen him get to this point. It was too late. Me and him, we had good final conversations, are decent. I mean, not like the fairy tale. But we had those final conversations, and it was past that point. He was no longer in a state, his body was completely shutting down. He was no longer in the state to be conscious, and I needed to trust myself. I put him through unnecessary agony, because I thought that I should do that for the family members who told me I should. I doubted myself because they were doubting me, instead of trusting that I was the primary one there, and I had seen him progress to this state, so I did know what was best. And I'm not saying anything bad about the family member. Of course, when they come in, they don't know the whole situation. They come in and they see this little sliver of time. Of course, they're going to question things. I just needed to be firm, kind but firm in my resolve of, hey, I am doing what's best for him. I am so sorry. This is so hard, but you're too late. He's no longer responsive, and I need to keep giving him his medicine or he is in agony. And I needed to have that faith in myself. So I guess I'm saying that if you are there a lot and you know the care of your parent or whoever you're caring for, trust yourself. You do know what is best. You're going to learn so much. You're going to make a bunch of beautiful memories, and you're so much stronger and more capable than you think. So you've got this. If you're going through this right now, leave a comment. I would love to connect and support in any way I can. So Tell me what you're going through, if any of this resonated, or if there's anything that is a lesson for you that I didn't include. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and I hope this gave you value.